This is Scale Her Up, the podcast for female-led businesses ready to grow to seven figures and beyond. I'm Dr. Brenda Hector, business coach and champion for women in business, on a mission to change the statistics and help more women scale successfully. Each week, we share real stories, tools, and tactics to help you build a business that supports the life you want. Follow the show and come and join our Scale Her Up Facebook community because you don't have to do this on your own. And today, a perfect example of not doing it on your own. I'm really pleased to have Lisa Gallagher and Nikki Slowey, who are co-founders of Flexibility Works. Ladies, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Let's start with the business. What is it that you do at Flexibility Works?
Okay, so we are a social enterprise and we advise and support employers to create really great flexible workplaces because we believe that so many people need flexibility, but it's not only good for people when it's done well and done intentionally, it's also great for business and good for the wider economy.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's quite a niche that you're working in there. What brought you to starting up Flexibility Works then?
We both came to quite similar experiences, personal experiences actually. I had my first baby 21 years ago. I was working in a senior role, was looking to work flexibly, part-time in particular, and found that was really quite tricky to negotiate. And there actually wasn't that many flexible jobs around, certainly at a kind of level that I was looking to work at. So it really got me quite curious. I realised I wasn't alone. There was lots of people in the same situation and began to think this isn't particularly good for people, particularly women, but also organisations losing talent, impact on our economy and all of that. So I just became quite curious about it, started doing a bit of research, and then around 12 years ago, had the opportunity to work with a UK-based charity who were looking for someone to lead a piece of work in Scotland looking at flexible working. So my background was in communications, so I kind of my workaround was freelancing in comms, but when that role came up, I thought I really need to go for this because it's something I'm really passionate about, and I think I could make a really good go at this. That was how I first started actually working in the space of flexible working and working with employers, and that's when I met Lisa.
Yeah, and my story is very similar. I was running a social enterprise. I had my first baby and was looking to come back on a job share basis. Again, this was something that the organisation at that time, it was maybe a bit far out, a bit too far removed from what they'd done before, perhaps. And again, I started to think there must be a better way to design work to keep people in roles that they have experience for and that they bring a lot to, but maybe are working in slightly different ways. How can we design work slightly differently that works both for organisations and for people? And for many reasons, this isn't just about parenting. People need a bit of flexibility for all sorts of reasons, whether it's a health reason or their well-being, or they've got another job on the side, or they're looking after elderly parents, or you just need to take a little bit of stress out of your day to your start times and whatever. So I had I was getting friends around kitchen tables going, I'm going to start up my own organisation to tackle this. And then with a bit of research, I realised that there was a project in Glasgow run by Nikki, but I didn't know Nikki at that time. And they were advertising for a new role. And I applied for that role. And it was actually, I was late with my admission, but I phoned up and said, I think I'm perfect for this role. Would you accept my application? A little bit late. They said yes. And I got that role and I started working alongside Nikki. But at that point, though, although I was passionate about the subject, I was still really sad to leave that other job and I guess I was spurred on through that sort of sadness and disappointment, but also frustration at what the status quo was, but then thought, okay, there's a real opportunity here. And so, unbeknown to me, Nikki had this similar experience and we came together and started working together for that other organisation.
It's amazing actually, because I've also had a similar experience, and that's possibly why I'm doing what I'm doing. I had twins 21 years ago, and I went down to working part-time, and I was one of the few people in the organization I worked for at the time, possibly even the only person who worked part-time. So then when my boss took voluntary redundancy, my role didn't exist. And because I was part-time, they didn't see that I could fit in anywhere else because that flexibility just wasn't something that was done in that organization.
Yeah.
And then when I was working somewhere else, and they knew I had 3 kids by that time, and the flexibility they gave me to enable me to manage pick up or drop off or school concerts and ill children and whatever meant that I gave much more back to them from that.
Right.
And I share that with lots of the businesses that I work with, that if you give flexibility to your staff, you get more back.
I think that's right, Brenda. It's a perfect example you just shared there. And while we very much want to create a more flexible working environment for people, we very much get that this can work really well for business. And we really love business. We're really excited by working with employers and going into different business environments and actually using that flexible working as a kind of leverage for all of those things, getting that discretionary effort, people that go that extra mile, people that just love your organization and really want it to do well and want to put that effort in and be that kind of really good brand ambassador. And we hear time and time again that people that have that flexibility, they want to give that back. But there's also other things that people in organizations that are flexible have lower sickness rates. They have better retention rates because people want to stay with them. They are more successful when they come to recruit because they are able to cast the net wider and appeal to people that are maybe looking for that bit of flexibility. So there's lots of really good evidence and data that actually backs up that flexible working isn't just a nice thing to do, but actually can really help businesses. And that's what we do and get excited by at Flexibility Works, is trying to find that sweet spot of finding flexibility that will really help people in their lives, but also work really well and benefit potentially that business as well. Yeah.
I know. And it also doesn't have to be huge changes. The story that I always love to tell as a manager I came across in the finance industry, that for him, flexibility was 10 minutes. His train home left once an hour on the hour. And he started a bit early, wanted to leave at 10 to 5 to get the 5 o'clock train home so he could read his child a bedtime story. And that 10 minutes of flexibility meant the world to him and to his family. And he said, it just makes me feel that I'm really valued as an employee. And I do just want to give my best for this organization. And I have this really valuable time with my child that I would otherwise be missing. So it doesn't have to be big, huge, scary changes for employers. And I think that's what we try to suggest too. On the whole, people are pretty sensible about what flexibility is possible in their particular role. And it's about just trying to have a bit of a conversation about what can work for both sides.
And I think I've seen in my work, working with businesses, and you've probably seen it as well, that you've got to be careful that you don't go too far and the staff are taking advantage. I've seen a few businesses where they want to be flexible, they give them flexibility, and then they get to a point where they're going, we've given them that and now they're taking too much and they don't know how to pull that back again. Do you help with that as well?
Yeah, I think particularly after the pandemic and organizations just morphed into hybrid working without maybe really thinking of what does this actually look like and what would be the best model for our organization. And now what we're doing is we're helping organizations to not, yeah, maybe formalize it, but to put a bit of structure around it, which is helpful for everybody because it's then about setting out what would be the best amount of office time, what's the purpose of being in the office. Just putting a little bit of structure around it can be really helpful. It is helpful to have a bit of a framework. It doesn't have to be a big war and peace policy, but for all types of flexible working, it is helpful to have a little bit of a structure and a framework so that everybody knows, managers know, people know themselves, what the kind of rules of engagement, I guess, are. And nothing has to stay the same forever because things can change. And that's the point of going back and talking to colleagues about what's working and what's not working. But it is helpful. So, yeah, we do help organisations to put those kind of frameworks or policies, if you like, in place so that there is a little bit of guardrails around about their flexible working so that it's sustainable, which is in everybody's interest.
And I think to add to that too, it's important just to keep an eye on it. It's not something that's just one and done. As Nikki says, things evolve over time. And I think part of that is encouraging managers to feel really confident, first of all, about what the organisation's approach is to flexibility. So giving managers the confidence then to have those conversations with their teams. And then second of all, for the managers to have those regular sort of interactions and check-ins and chats with their teams so that, for example, at one-to-ones, and we would always encourage regular one-to-ones anyway, that people are being asked very briefly, how is your work-life balance? How are your working patterns working for you? And quite often people will just answer that question, say, yeah, absolutely fine, no problems. But if there is an opportunity to discuss on either side, if there's an issue or something that might want to change, there's that sort of openness and forum to have that conversation. It's just about how business is done around here.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about the obvious flexibility or working hours and hybrid working or working from home, or that. Is there anything else that you guys have included? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you're right. They're the two, and particularly working from home. Quite often people will confuse home working, remote working with flexible working. But when we talk about flexible working, it's about where you work, when you work, so what sort of times, and how much you work. So whether that's part-time, job share, job split, or whatever. And people can work flexibly formally. So it's in your contract. For example, I work part-time, 4 days a week, or I work in the office 4 days a week, but every Wednesday I'm at home. That's a formal agreement if it's in your contract. But also people can work very flexibly informally as well. So it might be that within our office, it's okay to come in at set adjusted times, and that's okay, or to pop out to appointments, or to go to a child's play, or maybe to finish early one day and start early. All those nice informal flexibilities are a mixture of both. So I think that's important to say. We would also say that there's an element of flexibility that could be applied to almost every role, and that's frontline workers as well as desk-based workers. Because I think sometimes that we assume, or people assume, that flexibility is only for people who work in offices, but that's absolutely not the case. And we work with a range of businesses across sectors. So recently, for example, we've been working with 3 manufacturing organisations and looking to see how we can support the workers in those different frontline roles to have a bit of a better work-life balance and to have a bit of give and take flexibility within their roles. So those sorts of things might look like staggered start times, or it might be being able to change your shift with someone else within your team, or certainly advance notice of your shifts, predictability of shift patterns, being able to go to appointments if that's required and knowing that's okay to ask for those things, and part-time working within the shift environment, all of that sort of stuff. So there's a whole range of options out there that we would say fits all roles, if almost every role, if not all roles.
I'm thinking about 0 hours contracts there. We've mentioned those 21-year-olds. As students and whatever, there's a real benefit to that sort of working pattern. And it's not getting the best press maybe, and there are policies to maybe clamp down on that. Is this something that you've helped businesses with?
0 hour contracts we haven't worked with specifically. And we do know, for example, that for some people, 0 hour contract, for example, students, that can be a helpful way for them to work and have the flexibility to study and pick up shifts at work. But for a lot of people, the 0 hour contracts, as we know, and it's been in the media a lot, can cause a lot of problems, because when there's not predictability of hours and income, that can be really difficult for families and so on. And obviously there's a variety of changes coming in with the new employment rights bill, and the changes, and part of that is looking at 0 hour contracts. I can't think of any company that we've particularly advised on that, on 0 hours particularly, but it is in the kind of broad mix of flexible working options. I think what we would be talking about is making sure if you have 0 hour contracts that this is something that is working for the people within your
Yeah.
team as much
Yeah.
as for the business. I
Yeah.
suppose that's as far as we would go at the moment with that.
Yeah, I'd agree with you actually, but it's just something that I've noticed a lot recently. So yeah. Okay, so let's talk about, so you talked about how you got into the flexibility space. You didn't talk about how you launched Flexibility Works.
That's quite an interesting story, Brenda. So, well, Lisa and I probably always had a bit of an inkling to run our own organisation. We had the privilege of working together in our previous employer, so we knew we worked well together and brought complementary skills. And we had an opportunity to set up Flexibility Works. But that came at the start of the pandemic and the launch of Flexibility Works. That wasn't the plan. I don't think anybody would plan to launch an organisation at that time, but we were all ready to go. And then the first lockdown happened. But we pushed on regardless.
I
And
imagine flexibility was even more
it
in
was,
people's minds at that
yeah. And we
point.
didn't end up doing quite what we thought we were going to be doing because our model was very much going out and working in business premises with employers. We also bring organisations together to share learning and best practice. And we have that kind of community of employers, which we had been doing, or we thought we would be doing very much in person. So, like everybody, we had to pivot and things went online. So, events went online and webinars. And we ran our first one and it was really popular. So, we realised actually we've got all this knowledge from all these years of working in the flexible working space. And now organisations are being forced to work particularly in a remote way for those office-based roles. And we've got experience of helping organisations. So I remember the first webinar we ran was exceptionally busy. So we thought, actually, we've got something to offer to the world at the moment. And we did that. We did obviously help some organisations to create their own structure around how they were going to work in a remote way. We did government policy work around home working and remote working. So it wasn't quite what we thought we were going to be doing, but we were in our lane, we were in the flexible working space, and we were hopefully adding value to employers, business community, and for government as well. And that was 6 years ago that we launched Flexibility Works. And then things have obviously become much more normalised and actually more interest in flexible working now, both from individuals but also from businesses as well. So it definitely catapulted the awareness and interest in flexible working. So yeah, that in some ways has been a positive, if you could say that, from coming through the pandemic, that there's that greater awareness and interest in flexible working now.
And I would also just add to that it was a really difficult time for so many people for lots of different reasons. But the fact that we were starting a business together as two people and two mums, we always had the desire maybe or the interest to think about starting up on our own, but also there's a huge responsibility in that and a huge time commitment to set up your own business. And I think for Nikki and I as two, and we've both got 3 boys. Nikki's got 3 boys, I've got 3 boys, so 6 boys between us. Also have twins, Brenda, so I can empathise with you. We've got a lot going on, so having each other to set up a business, to support one another, to have those complementary skill sets and a very shared value or set of values of what we want this organisation to be and where we want it to go has helped us enormously. And I feel that as a model, particularly for women, but actually for all sorts of different people, co-founders working together, and it has to be the right partnership. It's massively beneficial. It was very helpful in those early days when it was tricky for our whole team. I remember having to drop off laptops at petrol stations to our teams, dropping off little care packages to our teams. That was a difficult time, but we had each other and we continue to have each other to balance a job and a business that we really enjoy and feel fortunate to have, but also to balance a busy home life with all the goings on that we all know about, family life and children and everything else. So for us, it's a model that works really well.
And you're living that Flexibility Works, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah, and without doing it together, I'm not quite sure we would be able to live it, because when you're running a business solo, it's difficult, as we know, for people to switch off, to take holidays. And we can do that because we know that the other person's there. And also the sleepless nights, the worries, there'll be times where I've maybe had a thought in the night and I'm worried about something, but straight away I've got Lisa I can talk to in the same. So it helps you to have that better quality of life, that balance, and it means we genuinely can advocate for work-life harmony because we're living it. And again, just because there's the two of us, that enables that.
It does. And I think another important thing to say is it's not just about children. So last year, for example, I had some quite out of the blue big health issues that needed attending to, and I had to be out of the business for a few months last year. And that was felt stressful enough, but because I had Nikki there, because there was someone else to keep that organization running and going, it meant that the business didn't take a big dip. It meant that it didn't go under. Having two people there that can not only fill in for holidays, but unexpected life events is a huge advantage for us. And again, when you're thinking about flexible working within businesses, those sorts of things are an advantage to businesses when you've maybe got a job share, for example, or you've got people who are really committed to your organisation because of the flexibility that's been on offer. That then, in difficult or challenging times, becomes an advantage. And it certainly was for us last year.
I also think we have fun. I
We
think
do
work
have
should
fun.
be fun. And we say
Yeah.
this when we're working with clients,
Yeah.
if you're happy at work and enjoying it, you are more productive and you're creative and bringing the innovation to the table. And I think we do as a two and as a team as well.
Our whole team, yeah.
We have fun. I really can't imagine working and running a business in any other way. But as Lisa says, it's got to be the right partnership.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we've been incredibly lucky that we found one another, and we do work at it as well. But yeah, we work hard and we have a good time as well, which I think.
Are you allowed to say that in business?
I
We
think
do a good job.
you
Yeah.
have one stab at
Oh.
life, and your work's going to be a big part of your work of your life. So if you can work hard and enjoy it, and a lot of that comes from being a two and running this together, is where I get a lot of my joy from at work.
You need to do things that bring you joy, don't you? If work doesn't bring you joy, then why are you doing it? It's something that comes up a lot when people are telling me how they started. I was doing something that I wasn't enjoying and I knew I wanted to do something different. So yeah, it's great that you're there. So tell me about your team then. How big's your team?
There's 5 of us. There's Nikki and I, and we've got 3 other employees and colleagues. And then we've got a couple of associates that we work with if we have special projects or whatever. So we always talk about ourselves as a small but mighty team. So we have Laura Jane, who does all the sort of business side coordination and finance and manages us. She was off last week and she came back. She said, oh my goodness, what's been happening in my absence? So we've got her. We've got a communications colleague, Karen, who helps us to get our message out there. And we've got Hannah, who helps us on the delivery side. So she's got an HR and training background. Yeah.
So at what point did you start bringing in a team then? And was that a difficult transition, from start up the pair of you and then expanding?
We started as a team, actually. We started as a team of 4. So Nikki and I and 2 others. So yeah, we started off a team. So we've grown slightly and we've got an associate team that's grown. So we're used to that. We brought 2 people along with us to start up. We had a little bit of seed funding to get us going. So we're in quite a fortunate position that we were able to pay people to help us at the beginning. And yeah, we're on a small growth journey at the moment as well. So yeah, we're looking to increase our turnover again this year.
Great. Now, so seed funding, that's interesting because one of the things that drove me to start the podcast was the Rose Review of Female Entrepreneurship. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's looking at the challenges that women have and why female-led businesses aren't growing, starting and scaling to the same extent as male-led businesses. And funding is one of the main issues there. So yeah, how do you go about finding seed funding? Where did that come from? What if somebody else is thinking of doing what you did? What would they need to think about?
We are maybe, I don't know, but we're slightly different to some of the other people that you've spoken to in that we've set up as a social enterprise. Both Nikki and I, most of our background is in third sector and public sector. I worked in homelessness for a long time, for example, working with young people. And a big part of why we do what we do is because we believe that flexible working, and in fact, the data tells you that many people who are out of work can only get into work if they have some form of flexibility in their job. So that's built into the values of our organisation. It's built into the mission of our organisation. and using flexible working as a tool to help people get into employment. So because of that, the funding that we got was charitable funding in the beginning, and that was through contacts that we had through the various networks that we had in our previous job roles. So that's where we got our initial seed funding from, and very much that kind of poverty alleviation lens and element of our work is a very strong part of Flexibility Works. We work with all different types of sectors, but very much we keep a strong eye on flexible working as a tool for employment and good employment.
No, that's brilliant. Yeah, it's if you're tackling a challenge that's there in society, then so that's where the funding came from.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So what have you learned? Like I usually ask this when it's only one person. What have you learned about yourself on your journey through entrepreneurship?
I would say, I could go first if you want, Nikki. I would say having good people around you is really important. Getting the right team, having a good board. We've got an amazing board. We talked about our staff team. We've also got a very supportive board. It's really important. I think having clarity about what you want to achieve. I know that sounds so obvious, but being very clear. And for us, it's sticking in our lane. You could get pulled off in lots of different directions, but we quite actively say to ourselves, no, this is what we're doing, pull ourselves back in. And I think also staying true to your values. I think that's been really important. It's an exercise that we've done ourselves, but with our staff team, and we've reviewed it. And I don't mean that in a very fluffy, what are our values? It's actually who we are as people and who we want to be as a business. And it actually makes any decision that we have to make as a business, who are our clients, who are we working with, how do we conduct ourselves, how do we want our staff team to conduct themselves? It makes all of that much clearer, because that, again, that's that thread that runs through everything we do. We talk about that, we refresh it with our team, and that helps us to give that clarity of how we want to present ourselves and show up at work. And I guess makes us who we are at Flexibility Works. We have our own style, as all organisations will have. And yeah, that clarity has helped me a lot, I would say.
And I think that's great, actually. And possibly because you're a social enterprise, that comes really at the forefront of what you're doing. But for anyone who's listening who's got business and thinks, oh, that's because it's a social enterprise, it's not. If all businesses know what impact they want to have, then it helps them on that journey, I think.
Yeah. I think probably one of the things I have learned about myself and it's partly running the organization, partly just the age I'm at in my early 50s, is you don't have to have a persona per se at work. And actually, I think maybe when I was younger, I used to feel I had to have my work persona, my home persona. And yes, you need to adapt to the environment that you're in to a certain extent. But actually just being yourself is okay. And believing that, and the more and more, it's quite awkward to say this, but I was out with a client a couple of days ago and she was saying what our board said to us, you and Lisa are the business. You're what makes the magic. And it's awkward to even say this, but actually being yourself, and that's okay. You don't have to be a certain character. And actually not only doing that, but that works. That is to the point that our board made to us and this client made, that actually that's what makes the business. So it's actually a positive thing just to turn up and be your true self. And probably this is the most comfortable I've ever been at that. Yeah. So that's definitely something that I'm
a good thing to say, actually.
learning or have learned over the last few years.
It comes up a few times in these conversations. I wrote down notes of the interview I did yesterday, and she said, I show up better when I'm myself.
Perfect.
And it's, yeah.
So
yeah,
true.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what advice would you have for another woman thinking of starting or growing a business or a social enterprise?
I would say go. I would say go for it. I would say if you have something that you believe in very strongly, you've got or a great idea, and yet you've got that passion to do something with it, I would say go for it. And I would say speak to as many people as possible, gather all of that around you, get advice and insight. And also just and think about what you want your life to be like as well. I think there's something important in there too. Is about the business side, but what sort of life do you want to have? Where do you want this business to take you as much as anything else? But I would say if you've got a great idea or you're really passionate, try it, go for it.
Yeah. And also to our point of being two female founders together,
Yeah.
sometimes the thing that maybe is putting people off is the things that we spoke about, that the long hours and taking that all on yourself as part of your talking to people and exploring the idea. Are there other like-minded people that might want to go on the journey with you? I guess would be something that I would be looking at, just because I know for us it's worked really well. And I think a lot of businesses, they struggle because that founder is burnt out. And we know that women still take on the bulk of caring responsibilities. So when you become a female business owner, that doesn't go away. You're still doing that. Now, we hope that changes, and it is changing. But at the moment, women still take on the bulk of caring, domestic duties, all of that stuff is still there. So yes, a bit of horizon scanning to see, is there someone else who might want to join you on your business journey?
A brilliant piece of advice. Yeah, fabulous. And other than each other, who's been your biggest supporter?
I think, as Lisa mentioned, our board, we have an incredibly supportive board. They are absolutely our cheerleaders. They push us, they challenge us, but they have been incredibly supportive and continue to show up, and they are very supportive and encouraging. Friends, I almost get back, sort of friends will say they're following us on LinkedIn, they're following us on Facebook. It's amazing what you're doing. They're really interested. So yeah, that gives you a little bit of pride. And I would say my husband, he has been so supportive. I don't think he fully always gets exactly what we do. He's a teacher, physics teacher, so he's quite in the logical space of. But yeah, and so yeah, it's the obvious. And my mom, she's the first person to always like anything that we put out on Facebook. No, she's not on LinkedIn. So it's the obvious village that I feel, but they're really active champions. I met one of my best friends at the weekend who, you sometimes don't speak for a couple of weeks, and we were together, and she was like, "You guys are amazing. What you're doing is amazing." And her sister was up from down south, and she was like, "You probably don't know what." So those people, those cheerleaders, yeah, there's lots of them. I feel very blessed. I've got such good people in my life.
Yeah, I think that's great. And to add to that, I would just say we talked about our staff team. They're huge advocates of flexible working too. So both past and present staff members, there's been some absolutely, and are some just incredible people that really care so much about this stuff. And also our initial funders, people that believed in us. We talked about that initial funding partner, and they believed in us and gave us support to do that. And existing funders who believe in what we believe in as well. And yeah, and I would also mention my husband, he runs his own business too. And I would say is very having that sort of understanding at home of your professional life and that sort of respect to give you the space to develop that, I think has helped me a lot. We may not always agree in the childcare sharing side, but on the professional side, that is great. And just having that backing and understanding of she might need to have this board meeting tonight, or she's got this call and we'll keep away, is hugely helpful. So yeah, I think we've got a good crew around us and it helps. And I would say that to anyone starting, as we've said before, having your people around you, because you are responsible for paying people's wages and delivering things, and it's your own thing, so you take a great pride in that. But you don't have to do it alone, and you shouldn't have to do it alone. And having that network around you really it helps a lot, and we're very fortunate, I think.
The other thing I would say is asking people. And
Yeah.
sometimes you can be shy to ask for advice, or do you think this is a good idea, or what do you think we could be doing? No one's ever said no.
No.
Anytime we've thought we might launch something or we might create something, would you give us 20 minutes of your time just to run an idea by? It's always yes. When we ask people to come and share their stories with other business leaders about their flexible working, unless they physically can't be in that room at that time, people are very generous with their time and with their support, but you need to ask. You
Yeah.
need to make that ask. And yeah, people are being incredibly kind with giving us advice and time when you make that ask.
That's, yeah, a brilliant message to end on. If you want something, ask for it. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And also give back too. If people are
Yes.
asking for your advice, you give that back, because hopefully you're creating that system whereby you can ask for help, you can offer help. So it's very much a reciprocal thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Ladies, I know we're running out of time. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you for having us, Brenda.
And thank you to you for listening to Scale Her Up. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show and leave a review. It helps more female business owners find us. Come and join the Scale Her Up Facebook community to get support, accountability, and connection with women who get it. And remember, only 1 in 3 UK entrepreneurs are female, and men are still 5 times more likely to scale their business beyond £1 million in turnover than women. When we start and scale our businesses to the same extent as men, we'll add £250 billion to the UK economy and create millions of jobs. So ladies, you can do it, and your business can make a massive difference.